Hi, this is Mr. Fowles, and coming to you now with a video about social studies, unlike my other videos that are about language arts. So hopefully this will be something new. But as you can see here, we're talking about early American cultures. And American here is used in a very loose sense because when these cultures existed, there was no political entity known as America. That came later, but for our frame of reference we can say that. But notice it does not say North American, nor does it say South American, nor does it say cultures of the United States, because all of these are just kind of figments of our current political imagination. And I've subtitled it Those Who Came Before Us because, they did. And here's the Tennessee Social Studies Standard. And here's a little Bellwork you can think about. Number 1, who were the first people on this continent being North America? 2, what is a society? And 3, is it better to live alone in the woods or in a town with people? That third question might make you think of the state of nature, John Locke in his second treatise of government, but if not, that's okay. But there's something to think about. He wrote about how people come into the world without any rules or laws, and it's only by association with other people that you develop these constructs, which is kind of neither here nor there for the moment. Here's the vocabulary, but I've discovered that this format is perhaps not the easiest to read, especially if you're on a projector. So this is the Cornell note approach, but those are the words, and it's a lot easier to read. Sedentary societies, semi-sedentary societies, non-sedentary societies, Mesoamerica, also pronounced Mesoamerica, the Maya, the Inca, the Aztec, the Pueblo, migrate, society, civilization, and slash and burn. Very exciting. Sounds fun. Slash and burn. Alright, so if we talk about early migration of this continent, you first have to think about where humanity developed, and that was in the the Fertile Crescent, or the intersection of the Tigris and the Euphrates, and early humanity blossomed from there. But it came here from the Bering Strait, and I'm clicking on this link so we can see this here. And this is the Bering Strait, and I want you to think for a minute if you know where this might be on a larger map. It's not very descript here, but I'll be zooming out. This kind of looks like a nose, and kind of almost looks like a fish. Another fish. Maybe they're fighting over this morsel. But let's zoom out. Maybe you'll get another better picture of what it is. I'll zoom out again, and they no longer like fish. Maybe it looks almost like a dragon, but this is a larger pet, or a bat. It has a bat in the wings and some evil creature. But here we should be getting maybe something a little more descriptive. I've taken away the labels, and it's just a satellite map. Try again. Oh, see, now we should be seeing something familiar. This should strike up conjure up some memories, and maybe one more. I think we see where we are now. So the Bering Strait is as a tip of what is now Alaska, and corner of what's Russia here. And what we used to have in this area was what we call a land bridge, and it was just what it sounds like, a bridge. And if I turn the labels back on, we should be able to see photos. That's not quite right. We should be able to see there we go, where there's the Bering Strait right there. But so that's where there was a bridge. I don't think that has anything to do with it, but it's possible. Anywho, so this is a time to think about how geography affects history. What if the Bering Strait never existed? There'd be no people in North America, and I would not be here giving you this video. So society, people moved over. I know this is very vague, and this is kind of broad, but for our purposes it's going to have to do. So people came over this land bridge, and we'll talk about when. It was like 40,000 BC. and they formed three types of societies: a sedentary, a semi-sedentary, and a non-sedentary. And there's different kinds of each, and we can talk about them in a minute. But first, I want you to think that the first people crossed into Alaska, it is believed, in 40,000 BC, also called BCE. How many years ago is that? Bear in mind that as I make this video, it is 2012 AD. So, how many years ago? If you said 42,012, you're right, which is a lot of years ago, slightly more than 40,000, but that should give you a sense of the scope of time we're talking about. And people came in. That's an oddly placed slide. And we talked about these, or I mentioned these three kinds of societies. Sedentary is if you're kind of stable and not moving about. Non-sedentary is the exact opposite. When you have no home that's permanent, and you hunt and you gather and you follow your prey all around, and that's kind of how people came over to North America, is they were maybe following some prey, and they crossed this land bridge and kept following the prey, and they found new prey, and they dove deeper into the continent. But if you want to stick around somewhere, you're going to have to find another way to get food. And agriculture kind of sprung from nowhere, and large-scale farming over here in our sedentary societies, the Aztecs, the Inca, and the Maya. We'll be talking about them in detail in a later video. Same with the Iroquois we'll mention again. We'll not mention these others again. So you can just see that sedentary societies, permanent. It's like what we have now. We don't move about. We can go to the store, get our food, go home, cook it, watch television. They can do these fellows could do, ladies and fellows could do the same thing, except the television, of course. But they had taxes and political leaders, so not unlike our American society now. And then these non-sedentary folks, well, they're the exact opposite. Of course, they can't really support a large population because they're always on the move. You have to carry your children around and carry your everything around, carry your home around, so you can't build a large home. It doesn't lend itself well to good political establishments because there's really no reason to have that, because it's almost a state where everyone is kind of fighting for themselves. And semi-sedentary is somewhere you can number in the middle, but it's basically an element of this, smush it into this. And as you can see, it took over a large amount of South America and a large amount of what is currently the United States. And a lot of it is going to have to do with weather. The weather here. These areas kind of lend themselves well for farming, whereas these areas may not have been well suited for agriculture. Quick question, if you can think about what kind of map that is. Your options could be political map, physical map, historical map. There are elements of it. I'll go back to the big one. Elements of physical map there. You have real coloration, but we don't see mountains. But we don't see political boundaries, so it's definitely not a political map. And we have some historical information that is shaded here with this false coloring. So we're going to call this a historical map, which is a definite, unique kind of map. And we can think about here the difference between society and civilization. Any group of people who kind of throw themselves together can become a society. That's your friends and you can be in a society. But a civilization is something a lot more complex, something that requires more time and effort historically to develop art, language, religion, systems of morality, traditions. And that's what can delineate society from civilization, and it's fun to think about because we often hear the phrase uncivilized bandied about, and if you think about what that might mean, it could have some startling implications for how you view even your own society and or civilization, and you shouldn't think about that. Are you in a society? Are you in a civilization? And do you have evidence either way? It's something kind of fun to think about. So I kind of gave this away there. Where did the first civilizations develop? Where do you think the first civilization developed? United States, South America, Central America, what about Canada? Probably better if I hadn't given you the answer before, but bam, there it is, Central America. And just to see how developed it could be, let's have a look. This is Machu Picchu, which was an Inca society. Inca site, which is in what is now Peru, and it's way up in the mountains, as you can see. And if you notice, we have all these. This is Google Maps, by the way, and kind of borrowed photos. These graded plateaus and or plains, and then up here you have just a town, and I guess that could be a yak, maybe a llama. And if you get a chance in your life, I'd suggest going. I want to go. You can hike for 4 days, and then you come and you see Machu Picchu at sunrise, and it's supposed to be amazing. But barring that, we have some fun internet photos. I'll zoom around. I mean, this was built 3,000 years ago, more than 3,000 years ago. And it's pretty complex. I don't think I could do this good a job in the year 2012. And just to get a sense of where we are, I think it's valuable if we get a sense of the terrain that we're working with here. There it is. And you can see it's quite hilly. All of these lines, these are contour lines that give you elevation, yeah? So we can kind of see 2,400 meters, so 2.4 kilometers, 2.6 kilometers. That site is nearly 2.5 kilometers above sea level, or in this case, river level. No, that river is at 1,000, well, about 1,800, so about 2.5 kilometers above sea level, and you can just see what we're talking about. And yet they got all those stones kind of mined, and they got them shaped just right. So that took quite a bit of doing there, and a lot of social organization necessary. So they got that done. It's pretty nifty, huh? For the purposes of this course, you only really kind of need to worry about the Olmec, the Maya, the Inca, the Aztec, for now. Also, Inuit, Pueblo, Iroquois, and Algonquin. These are good because they have a lot more present-day relevance. The Inuit currently exist, as do semblances of the others. So they're there to think about. And we'll talk more in detail. In your journal, this is a very important question. Is modern civilization better or worse than ancient civilization? Why do you think so? Now, this is very open-ended and generic, and you can think about it as you see fit. But modern civilization, with all of our technological advances, some think that it has been marred by these very advances, that we surrounded ourselves with trifles and fancy without finding anything deep and meaningful. And while we have a great deal of pomp and circumstance, we have very little substance, and people are kind of unapologetic in how they attack our civilization. But from your point of view, is modern civilization better or worse than ancient civilization? And why do you think so? So you can take a minute and reflect on that. And just to review, this was Early American Cultures. My name is Aaron Fowles. Thank you very much. And I'm just gonna get this out of the way here. It's gonna take me a minute. There we go. Goodbye.